Well, Russian bombardment in western Ukraine is adding to the growing humanitarian crisis, with Ukrainians now forced to flee cities previously regarded as safe. Thousands of people have been crossing into Eastern Europe from cities including Lviv after airstrikes targeted a military base near the Polish border. Our correspondent Natalie Carney is near Poland's border with Ukraine. Natalie, thanks for coming on. What's happening where you are now?
Well, I'm at one of the main train stations that is seeing an incredible amount of refugees fleeing Ukraine into Poland. It's actually the main sort of transit hub for Ukrainian refugees. Poland, of course, has accepted the majority of those fleeing the fighting in Ukraine, and the majority of those pass through this train station in Przemys. In fact, 5,600 came through this train station yesterday. That's slightly below their daily numbers of about 1,000 more than that. However, they are expecting those numbers to increase again, particularly, as you've mentioned, after the shelling on a military base. It's only about 60 kilometres away from here. Following that attack, the mayor of Przemys said that the city is willing to welcome more of those refugees and is currently rushing to create more bed space and more resources available for the expected influx from what was always deemed, or since the conflict began, a relatively safe western Ukraine. Yet, however, while we're seeing floods of people arriving into Poland, we're also coming across quite a number of Ukrainians that are looking to go back into the fighting.
Jan Przemys has had enough. For the last 2 months, he and his wife have been living and working in the comfort of NATO member Poland. But that all changed when Russian President Vladimir Putin launched the offensive in Ukraine. Jan quit his job, bought as much military gear and medical protection as he could, and is now heading back to Ukraine to fight on the front line.
On the first day of the war, I decided to return to Ukraine. It is my duty. I understand the consequences of this decision, but I can't do otherwise. Also, my sister is a policewoman working in Kiev right now. I would like to go to Kiev and protect the president.
Yet Russia's attack Sunday on a Ukrainian military training base in Lviv, where fresh recruits like Jan are trained, could change the dynamics of the 2.5-week-old conflict.
More and more Ukrainians arriving at this train station in eastern Poland, moving on to other points across the European Union, with Russia's most westwardly attack yet, and growing concerns over possible new attacks on convoys as well as humanitarian lines in and out of Poland. This area is bracing itself for further influx of refugees.
Prior to Sunday's airstrike on western Ukraine, once thought of as the country's only safe haven, the United Nations had predicted that upwards of at least 4 million Ukrainians would be forced to flee their country. So far, more than 2.6 million already have, with more than half of those crossing into neighbouring Poland. According to officials, roughly 60% remain in Poland, such as Irina, who is heading to the capital Warsaw with her son to stay with a friend.
My friend and I came from Kiev with our children. We had been staying in western Ukraine for a while, but they also started bombing there. Strong sirens started after 2 weeks, so then we came to Poland. I hope it will be safe here because I haven't got the strength to keep fleeing.
Germany has taken in most of any non-bordering country, with nearly 123,000 refugees from Ukraine. It has also agreed to take a further 2,500 directly from Moldova. While world leaders condemned the latest attack, the Russian offensive is pushing more people to take up the fight themselves. So while millions are leaving the conflict zone, there are those compelled to join it.
Poland, as mentioned, taking in the most of those refugees, is now going to be given 500 million euros from the European Union. However, Poland is now saying that's just not enough, again, especially with the influx that is expected. The EU, meanwhile, is preparing some new laws that would allow Ukrainian nationals fleeing the fighting to stay in the Union for up to 3 years. That would also provide them with access to housing, to social welfare. They'd be allowed to work, education for their children. That has not been approved yet, but it's certainly in discussions. Here in Poland, nationals of Ukraine can now stay for up to 18 months and have free access to medical care.
Natalie Carney, thank you very much indeed.